This moment felt like death. I was like, oh, so this is it, the crossover to a peaceful realm. I noticed that I disconnected from my body and I was somewhere else. I could see my body lying on the ground. I could see my friends, one of them that had passed. He stopped me and he's like, you can't stay. Suddenly everyone around him pushed me back and I opened my eyes and I was back in my body, and it definitely changed me because it started to challenge the purpose of my life.
And then this teacher led you to learn about the awareness intensive.
Something greater than myself, greater than the fear, would click and say, let's go do this. In that retreat, after 3.5 days, all my life was challenged and all my beliefs were challenged, and it was so powerful. It was like this truth-seeking ignition. It shattered everything I had come to believe about myself. Do you want to know yourself? Do you really want to know who you really are? In some way, we all know that we want that.
Hello and welcome to Soul Unique. I'm Anu Peter. My goal with Soul Unique is to assist you in uncovering, forging, and navigating your own personal spiritual path by sharing the very personal stories of inspiring individuals from all walks of life who are on their own unique spiritual journeys. My guest today is a beautiful soul on a profound transformational journey, Naran Desgarennes. But before we begin, I want to be sure you know that, as is the case with every episode of Soul Unique, if anything is mentioned during the episode that you'd like to know more about, just go to soulunique.com for more information on the topics that are discussed. I also have links to any resources, such as books, that were mentioned in the episode, and you can find all of that for free at soulunique.com. And while you're there, please sign up for my mailing list. And now moving on to my guest, Naran Desgarennes is a beautiful soul who has been on his own conscious spiritual odyssey since he suffered a tragic event about 15 years ago. That life-changing event set him on a path that led him to take a deep dive into the exploration of a variety of healing, transformational, and spiritual practices. And today, Naran is a facilitator of awareness-intensive retreats. He is a master energy healer, and he is certified in the practice of Clarity Breathwork, which is how Naran and I met a little over 5 years ago in Costa Rica. So with that, I want to say welcome to Naran.
Hi, Anu.
Welcome. It's great to have you here. And thank you. You're calling in from Montreal, Quebec. Such a beautiful place to be. And I'm just thrilled to have you on my podcast.
Yeah, I'm thrilled as well. Thank you for the invitation.
So I want to move forward here with tenderness and compassion, because I know that the life-changing event that happened about 15 years ago for you was not easy, to say the least. And while a lot can change in 15 years, I imagine it may still have some impact. And overall, I know that that impact has clearly been profound. Can you share with us what happened that so deeply altered the course of your life?
I was actually on a trip in Mexico City, and I was actually going to see my parents and just to visit. And I was with some friends as well, and we were catching a bus and back to the city where my parents lived, and we had gone shopping, and our bus was about to leave, and I kind of stopped in front of the bus to stop it, and so we could actually take it, and we jumped in the bus. Little we know that an hour after, the bus was gonna crash and will fall running down the hill, rolling, I might say, down the hill for about 500 meters, and we would found ourselves lying on the ground and um, all bruised and hearing all kinds of distress noises. And in those moments, it was so sudden that as the bus was rolling down, I was really in a state of presence because everything was so vivid and it was so slow and like a slow motion, like in the movies.
Hmm.
And at one point, I noticed that I disconnected from my body, and I was somewhere else, and somewhere else that is also here. And I could see my body lying on the ground. I could see my friends, one of them that had passed, and when I turned around, I he was in front of me, right there with people, and that I could not recognize. I knew he was there. I could recognize him, and I couldn't recognize anybody else. This moment felt like death. I was like, oh, so this is it, and there was no feelings about what was happening. It was just that, and I just wanted to stay with him. I was like, oh well, then I can remember the words, but I remember that I wanted to move on with him, and um, he stopped me and he's like, "You can't stay." And I was like, "But why?" I was like, "You have to return." And I was like, "I don't want to. I know that if I return, I'm gonna suffer. I'm gonna. My body is hurt. I can see my body. I know that I can see the distress of the scenery. I don't want to go back." And suddenly, everyone around him pushed me back, and I opened my eyes, and I was back in my body. And um, I saw a lot of people in distress and going through difficult stuff. People with ripped limbs, and it was a very intense moment because I had just had this um, experience of feeling like dead, and the crossover to um, a peaceful realm, and suddenly I was not anymore there. So in the moment, I didn't really recognize what had happened. I just said like, oh well, I have to get into safety. So I waited there for about 8 hours or more, and then rescue came and pulled me out the mountain with in ropes and with branches running through my body and dirt and
My
all
gosh.
that. um, at the moment was I was just surviving and keeping myself alive. There was a lot of adrenaline, and there was this strength that was there available for me, and b- m- besides the bruises and the broken bones um, and all the physical trauma that had occurred, and including seeing my other friend buried in the ground because the bus had gone over him and ripped his body apart. And so
Mm.
that's what happened in that bus accident, which I didn't really process in the moment until later on.
Naran, that is so moving, and I'm so touched that you were willing to share all of that. It's just such an incredible experience that that certainly can't imagine, and I'm sure that most of the people that will be watching this and listening to this can't imagine. But I've never heard you describe it before as a near death experience, and I know that we've talked about it before a few years ago, and so I'd love to go a little bit more into your experience and what you called this peaceful realm, and that you said the friend that you were talking to was the friend next to you that had been killed, and he was now also in that realm with you, and he said basically, or he indicated that he was going to stay, but that you were supposed to return. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I knew he was with his mom as well, but I couldn't see his mom because I never met her. She had passed away before we actually met each other. But I knew he was with her, and I could perceive him not in his physical form, but I knew it was him that I was conversing in the moment. Yeah.
Can you share anything else about those moments in the peaceful realm, as you called it?
it was very abstract. It was like a telepathic conversation in in nowhere, and it was just a recognition of himself and myself, and um, this piece that where it was holding us like almost in a bubble while we were conversing, and it was very fast and eternal at the same time. That when I came back into my body, I could just not really process it. It felt like a dream that I had lived. And actually, in those moments, I felt I left it like that. I was like, oh, I just dreamt that I
Mhm.
was with my friend, and I just moved on in a sense that I just didn't recognize what had just happened there.
But you also said you had the sense that there were others towards the end that there were also saying, "No, you have to go back." Who would you say those people were, or beings, or do you have any idea?
No, it is very abstract as well because I just saw him as and this multiple him, because it was also him, and it was also part of kind of me. And when they said you can't stay, is like if they would have told me that that was not the moment for me to be in that place. Or it almost felt like they were in shock, all of them, saying, what are you doing here?
Hmm.
I remember it was so peaceful that I was like, I don't want to leave this place, and they kind of pushed me back.
But somehow it was right that your friend would pass on. It was like that it was his time to go, I guess?
Yeah, definitely.
And your other friend that you said later you saw his body was crushed, you did you have any interaction with him in this other peaceful realm?
That was him, the
Oh, it
one.
was him,
Yeah,
okay.
my other friend that was with me in the bus, he survived, and he actually had 0 scratches, which is very impressive because all of us, he was the only one that didn't have any bruises, any nothing. He had just been untouched.
That's incredible. Is he the only one
Yeah,
that basically got out of it unscathed? That's incredible.
yeah.
And how many people were in the bus?
39.
And many of them, were killed?
Yeah, most of them died. Yeah, we were just 6 survivors. Yeah.
Oh, Naran, that's such an incredible story, and but apparently it's also the beginning of an incredible change in the course of your life. So,
Mhm.
how long did you stay in Mexico after that for healing and repair?
Well, I was there for like about 9 months because I was in a wheelchair after that, for
Oh,
about 3 to 6 months. I really can't remember the time well there, but I remember it was a long process, and I was in a wheelchair, recovering from fractures and bones and surgeries and all that to repair everything that had been bruised during the accident. And I remember I had to learn how to walk again. It definitely changed me because it started to challenge the purpose of my life. And during those months that I was recovering, I remember I was constantly thinking about, why did I survive? Not that I was remembering those moments of where I had interactions with my friend, but I remember clearly that I was questioning, why wasn't me instead of him that died. And the more time passed, the more I thought about the purpose of my life, and at the same time, the more I was repressing um, the story of the accident.
why would you say you were repressing it? As sort of a survival technique or just the ability to step back into your physical life?
I think I was afraid of meeting. I don't think I was afraid. I know that I was afraid of meeting the moments of out of body that I experienced, because my life before was very material and very um, there was no spirituality in my life. There was no beliefs about out of what was my experience or in my body. And my mother was Catholic, and my father was a non-believer of anything. And um, there was some mixed messages from my parents, and I always kind of pushed away the beliefs around spirituality and and God and all that. It was so big, the experience that I had lived in those moments, that I felt afraid of meeting that. And I was like, I just have to go back into getting a job and making money and living my life again. So it felt like I was in survival mode
Mm.
from then on. And
Mhm.
not just survival of my body, but survival of the identity uh, that I had almost crystallized in those moments. So
You mean a survival of the identity that you had up until the accident?
yeah,
So that and identity was still trying to sort of assert itself into your experience because that's all you knew.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
But there was this other bigger knowing that was moving in and moving in and moving in. So you told me a little bit before about how then once you got back to Canada, which is where you had been living, Montreal, I'm assuming that's when you started or you discovered energy healing. So can you tell us about how that unfolded for you?
The accident never left in a way, because I was having surgeries on my shoulder and the other shoulder, and it was kind of like remembering constantly that there was something unprocessed, unmet happening in my body. So after 9 years, more or less, of denial, there was a surgery where they kind of cut nerve from my shoulder, and I stopped feeling my arm for about a year. And in that process of getting the nerve to grow all the way, um, I had a friend that was a really dear friend, that she had been on the almost very similar path and similar actually stories. And she was learning Reiki, and at one point she came over and she asked me, "Can do you want me to give some Reiki since you're going through a lot?" And I was like, "Sure." And I was really in a very resistant state, that I was just like, "Sure," but without necessarily allowing myself to experience something. Like, I had zero expectation of whatever she was about to do. And she started to do some energy on my shoulder, and I started to cry.
Mm.
And these tears came from like a different place of the regular tears that I would normally cry from. They were like very deep tears. And since I had no reasoning from crying in the moment, then something there was opened, and that felt really right. I was like, "Oh, this is exactly what I was looking for unconsciously."
Huh.
And yeah, that opened the door for wanting to explore into that as well.
And you said this was 9 years after the accident?
More or less, yeah.
Wow. So you did go back into sort of as much as you could anyway, kind of a regular life or what attempting to go into what life had been before the accident for about 9 years after the accident. And this was
Yeah.
back in Montreal. And then you rendezvoused with this friend for the energy healing. So then how did it unfold from there? I think you said she inspires you to then learn Reiki.
Yeah, I started to taking Reiki classes, and that started opening things up and getting in touch with my emotions. And um, once it started, it was it was great. It was like, this feels exactly what I've always been wanting to get in touch with. It's just that this time it's in a safe environment. I remember my teacher, she was very neutral and grounded at the same time, uh, that created this safety, that where I could just share what was going on in my life, and I felt received from her part and from the group as well. So it just
Mm.
felt right, and it felt good as well in the moment. Felt really, just being received is really healing. Yeah.
Yes, clearly you found the right person. And then this teacher led you to learn about the awareness intensive.
Yeah, I remember where once after finishing the Reiki class, after probably a year and a half of working with her and learning Reiki and energy healing, she just invited me. She was like, "Do you want to come to a silent retreat that I will be giving, that I usually give?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't ask much more, but I just said yes. I just trusted whatever she would offer me in the moment. I would have said yes, because I just I could just feel that, I just could feel that her energy, that she was okay with herself, and there was some curiosity about, um how to find that, like, she has this quality of being here, being present, and fully accepting her her experience, that was very intriguing. So I just said yes without actually knowing what I was getting into.
That's so beautiful. And so then that retreat turned out to be an awareness intensive retreat.
That turned out to be an awareness intensive, and in that retreat, after 3.5 days, uh, all my life was challenged, and all my beliefs were challenged, and it was so powerful, so powerful, that when, at the end of the retreat, I just came out. I remember I told her, "I don't know what happened, but thank you so much."
I love that. I don't know what happened, but I think it was good.
Yeah. Well, I knew there was something. So I knew something had happened. I just could not describe it. So,
Mm.
um, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So how long did it take for you to sort of let what you received in that retreat, to let it sink in and realize that something perhaps profound or some shift had taken place?
I remember when I came back to my house, I just bursted into tears. And later on at night, I had this habit of watching TV. So I came back to my habits. And as I was watching TV, I was just going through whatever was available on Netflix. And suddenly I was watching this cook show where, there's the chef and there's the participants, and they're cooking for the chef. And there was this lady crying that she didn't make her cooking, or to the expectations of the chef. The chef was being critic about her. And I had this powerful, it was not a realization, but I could see through, that she didn't know herself, that she was crying because she needed the
Mm.
approval of the chef, because
Mm.
she didn't know herself. And I could see clearly that this was the mirror that I was seeing myself through. I was like, this is what I used to do.
Mm.
This is exactly the way I used to behave, because I didn't know myself. I didn't know who I was. And in those moments, I just stood there frozen, and feeling my body, and knowing that I had just had a glimpse of who I am. And it felt that there's this peace invaded the body. And I was like, wow. It was incredible to see myself in the mirror, thanks to this lady in the TV. So it was so everything started right after the retreat, and it every day it was just another another shock of awareness, if I could say it like that. Yeah.
That is so beautiful, Naran. Thank you for sharing that. And so then obviously you must have known that, well, this awareness intensive stuff is great. I like this. So how did you then continue to move forward with that work as a participant and then down the road? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I remember after that I used to listen to audios like from Adyashanti or Eckhart Tolle. I got into all also Osho. I used to like a lot of his talks and his books, and somehow somehow I could understand what they were talking about. I could not, and it was not an understanding from the mind. I could feel it in myself as well. That something um, powerful had been just installed almost in 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 myself, and it, it was like this truth-seeking ignition. It felt like that. It was like an ignition, and at the same time, when I used to listen to podcasts or talks, something resonated very deeply in myself. It had been right after that retreat that this openness had started. So I decided to go back to have another taste of this retreat, and I actually did it with another teacher, and this time I did it for a little longer than 3 days. It was I think it was 6 days. It was a 6 day awareness intensive where uh, we kind of have more time to explore, and um, I remember having beautiful experiences throughout the 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 retreat, and um, meeting myself again from like a different almost angle, but it was like getting closer, getting to know myself better, like how my mind works. It is like a lab, how this mind works, how my body reacts to the beliefs, how my thoughts are happening, and in which sequence, and which thoughts are leading to different thoughts, and what happens when I let go of all that. What happens when I don't believe this? What happens if I am willing to meet myself again? um, so it was just it's like a boot camp. I would call it like that. It was like a boot camp that time, and I keep coming back every year.
So once a year or so. And this is going to, is it Serbia?
This was actually in Montreal. I had not
Okay.
done any of those outside Canada. Um, that was kind of my initiation, and after I decided to came regularly, uh, every time that I would see one happening, I would subscribe myself. There was something greater than me, because I must admit that at the beginning there was a lot of intensity in the retreat, and there was some sort of there was even fear coming up. So something greater than myself, greater than the fear, would click and say, let's go do this. And at one point I found myself wanting to be an assistant for the retreat, and at the same time being in the process. So I was doing both. I was in the process, and I was being an assistant as well. And that's how slowly it started growing, the willingness to lead a process like that, and an understanding of the process itself as well.
Wow. So we can talk more about that later about now you are a facilitator of the awareness intensive, and how beautiful that I would imagine maybe all awareness intensive teachers or facilitators are people like yourself who had been profoundly touched by the work. And what a beautiful way to share it. Another part of your path has been discovering breath work, specifically Clarity Breathwork, which of course is how we met back in 2020. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your transformational experiences with breathwork as a participant, and we can talk more about your work as a practitioner a little bit later.
It's been a gift, as a surprising gift in my life. I was in Pachamama with you, and I remember I was in this juice fast retreat for 4 days, and we had a breathwork session. I had never heard about breathwork before that time, but breathwork was part of the detox retreat, and I was like, oh well, we're just gonna breathe, and my mom had passed away 1 year prior to that trip, and as we started the session, um, and I was getting deeper into what I had been suppressing, um, I started to come in contact with my mom during the breathwork session, and crying everything that I couldn't cry during her funeral. I was holding my family together during the funeral, so I think I never gave myself permission to really feel and process the emotional material of her death, and getting to contact with herself as well, like in this in a very intimate way, or even just symbolically talking to her. I had not done that, and this powerful experience during the detox retreat opened that door for me. I remember looking at the facilitator, and I could see my mom through her, and she was talking to me, and I could see my mom again talking to me through her, and it was like, wow, what an incredible experience. And at the same time, there was the level 5 of Clarity Breathwork finishing at Pachamama, and I saw all the available sessions, so I subscribed myself to them all. And the first one was where we met, and it was also a very powerful one for me.
Yeah, I just love that story. So just to clarify for the listeners, I was there training in Clarity Breathwork, and at the end of the 5 or 6 week training, they paired us up and we led student breathwork sessions in twos for anybody who was at Pachamama, which is an eco retreat and community in Costa Rica, and anyone who was there at Pachamama could attend. And so I was leading this breathwork session with my new friend and student. His name was Christian, and Naran came to that session. So that's really special. But I'd love to also just talk a little bit more about breathwork here in general. So for me, I had read about breathwork, I think, back in probably 2015, 2016. And I remember reading these very lofty, to me at the time, they seemed very lofty claims about what breathwork could do and how it could be like a psychedelic experience and how deep someone could go into an altered state of consciousness. And when I was reading them, I remember thinking, how could that be possible? They must be exaggerating. And so it took me a while to finally just try breath work. And I finally just kind of randomly found someone in my area in California who was offering a breathwork retreat. And sure enough, in that first experience with it, I dropped in and I actually had an experience of my mother who had recently passed away. So it's very similar to your first experience with breath work. And I was just blown away. And I had been working with ayahuasca for many years before that. So I was just amazed to find that breath work took me into a similar expanded state of awareness and consciousness as ayahuasca and other psychedelics could. And again, I had this experience of my mother shortly after her passing that was just profound. And so I found out where that teacher had trained, or that facilitator, and it turned out to be Clarity Breathwork, and that's what
Hmm.
led me to do the training at Pachamama in Costa Rica in early 2020, right before the pandemic. So thank you for sharing that. And now, of course, you're a breathwork facilitator, and I'll mention a little bit more about that later on. That you've got a retreat coming up. at Pachamama, which is so wonderful. But let's back up a little bit here. I'd love to hear a little about your childhood and what life was like for you growing up. And you mentioned earlier that your mom was Catholic and your father had no sense of religion or spirituality. Um, so, can you tell us more about that and what were your own thoughts about spirituality or even about Catholicism at the time?
My mother was Catholic, but was not. She would never go to church. She was Catholic because her mother was Catholic, and by default I was too. And my mother was always she was religious in her own way, and my father was just there but absent in his own way and always criticizing religion and all that. So then my sister was also became Christian, and there was a mix of things about spirituality. So I found myself following my sister because something in me was willing to really discover something. Like something in me knew there was something greater than just this. And I remember having moments um, where I would just see a tree and I would question, is that tree green? Is that really green? How do I really know that that tree is green? What if it's not? How can I be certain that everyone sees green the way I see green? And that would take me into this questioning um, of what's true. I remember questioning what is the truth of this tree. And I had moments, several occasions, I had these questions, and um, that got clouded with other thoughts and beliefs that that came from the background of my mom and my dad. And I would say, like, I might be just going crazy. Why would I be questioning that? It's just a tree. And I could see the narrative. Well, now that I remember that, I recognize the narrative. Where was it coming from as well? I knew there was something very deep that was calling in to be explored. And at one point, I started following my sister and got really intense in her religion. And at one point, I was like, "This is not for me," because I felt rejected. I still felt rejected. I was kind of looking for this coming home, being accepted, being welcomed, and I didn't feel like that at all. I actually felt the opposite, and so that kind of created a wall as well of rejection, almost rejection to religion. And also by seeing the behaviors of my sister and her husband relationship that were contradictory to the religion, and the dynamics of the religion itself inside that were contradictory to what they were what they were preaching. And anyways, it was something was not true. So something didn't resonate a truth there. And so that got tossed aside. And then seeing my mom Catholicism also being contradictory, and my dad's atheism being contradictory as well. So I kind of, it pushed me into the direction of, I think I have to find this on my own.
I love that, Naran. And it's interesting about your observations about the tree. I mean, it sounds like in some ways, I guess, of course, hindsight is 2020, but that was sort of a prelude to kind of the work that you do in the awareness intensive, like
Hmm.
questioning perception and questioning, well, what are my thoughts and my perceptions actually real, and those kinds of things. Of course, I haven't done the awareness intensive yet, but that's really interesting. And I think it's also interesting what you touched on about religion and how I think a lot of people in the world reject spirituality because their initial introduction to any sort of spiritual approach or perspective to life is through religion. And if they get turned off by religion, they just completely step away from the whole sort of spiritual world. It's sort of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And of course, you and I, and hopefully my listeners are discovering that there's a whole world of spirituality that is available outside of religion. And that's the whole point of Soul Unique, is that each of us can construct and forge and uncover and discover and navigate our own personal spiritual path that makes absolute sense exactly for who we are and our personal path in this life and in the broader sense of our existence as a being, as a soul.
That sounds beautiful. That's really, really awesome.
Thank you, thank you. So I'd love to touch on other transformational pathways that you may have explored. Spiritual practices, psychedelics, teachers, non-duality. Uh, in your bio, you mentioned non-duality and somatic experiencing. So I'd love to hear about any or all of those.
Well, I think my search or this ignition of wanting to get to the truth, there was a lot of resistance at one point. My life was the life that I had thought it was for me wasn't. Um, my job was being challenged, my health was being challenged, my relationship was being challenged, my the beliefs around what do I like and what I don't like was being challenged. That took me to find through different alternatives. I noticed that I was trying to fix myself and I was trying to heal myself and patch back the identity that was falling apart. And through that, I tried psychedelics. I worked with ayahuasca. I worked with mescaline, peyote, and uh, o- basically everything that was available for me. And in a moment of deep transformation, I remember I was getting off medication from my accident as well, and I was trying to find healing out of the medication that they had given me, and that I didn't know the consequences of it, that I had been taken for so many years. Um, I had been taking anxiolytics for so many years, masking all the pain and the sorrow from my accident. That at one point, while I was in Pachamama, I decided that I had enough of the medications, that that was not what I felt it was right for my body or my mind. Um, and the psychedelics came in the picture. Then I had worked already a little bit with psychedelics, but that was kind of the turning point of it. And I decided to go in to try 5-MeO DMT, and it shattered everything I had come to believe about myself. And when I came back from that journey, I found myself in a very distressed uh, nervous system, and everything that was being challenged before that had just magnified into its highest potency. It was very, very challenging after that. So somatic experiencing was one of the things that I used, or that I tried to kind of regulate myself in those moments, or to come back into my experience, to accept what was happening to me, to accept that whatever I was doing to patch up my identity was not going to work. And it was journey of acceptance, because actually the breath work, the somatic experiences, and the somatic experiencing and the psychedelics um, didn't work in the way that I thought they would work. They work by helping me to accept my experience, that things were changing and I had to accept the change, and that I had to embrace the change, and that all these ideas about myself um, had to put into pause and to be questioned and to let go, and uh, through that, I also was reading a lot of non-duality, and in general, since the beginning, I think since the awareness intensive, Adyashanti, Osho, they were all um, speaking, pointing to that, and that really resonated into what I had experienced during the process, and all that started to come together slowly. And it was during another awareness intensive retreat that I just come to a realization that I had just to stop, to stop doing, um, and I felt this peace happening in my body and in my mind, and it it, it came into full acceptance of who am I in this moment and who I am not, and challenged the belief of who am I. And it also helped me to realize that whoever I thought I was, I am not, and that I actually don't exist. Um, Whoever I thought I once thought I was doesn't exist.
So that's what stopped. You referenced something stopping. That's what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Okay. The identity that you thought you were was over.
Yeah, it almost felt like coming to the search of something. They're going after something. Just stopped, and it's just this. It's right here, and it's been always with me. It's just that I couldn't see it. I was too busy searching.
The path of the seeker. Yes.
Hmm.
With that in mind, if you were to describe your current spiritual perspective in your life today, how would you describe it?
Through the processes and through the trials and errors of trying, of doing, um, it almost feels like whatever I had thought about spirituality, or whatever form that I would put into this, uh, was not, and that this moment is just here. And if I can just see it for what it is, without putting labels, and without putting adjectives or subjects, or it's an experience. It's like if the mind gets involved, it clouds everything that it's in this moment. Um, so for me, it's been the work of just coming to myself, to come into noticing my thoughts, noticing the beliefs happening, and just allowing them to dissolve and to stay with what's left. I have also moved away from spiritual because it is more than the spiritual that I had conceived was also in my thoughts and beliefs. It was also another another way of calling the what is not true, and coming to realization that what it's real, it's here, and it is not spiritual, it is not spiritual, it's just this, it's just this moment. It is the truth, it is the direct experience with this interaction, the interaction um, with the appearance of this reality, or the interaction through the senses, through this body, into this sort of experience. And it's really hard to describe because there is the lack of words to really put all this together. But this is a little
Well,
bit of how can I describe it.
you're doing a beautiful job. And yeah, I love that. I mean, it's so just using the term spiritual implies that some things are spiritual and some things are not, right? So it's a little bit of a challenge for me using that term to describe what Soul Unique is all about. But it's also, I think it's important for me to identify that so people sort of know what I'm up to here. But in general, yeah, I believe, or I see it as though, you could say that everything is spiritual. I also like the term multidimensional. To me, spiritual points to something different for each person. but there's something more to it, and it's acknowledging that we're more than just this physical essence. We're more than the mind. So we could double click on this forever and keep going through this conversation. But let's keep moving ahead here. So thank you for what you shared.
It is also almost like if putting words, it would create even more confusion
Yeah.
to all this, and it's creating forms and beliefs. And my path has been moving away from all that, and um, yeah.
I love that. Although being being now a podcast host, I do especially I enjoy talking about these kinds of things and
Mm.
trying to touch into them from, I guess, really in a sense from a mind perspective, because it's all with the intent of pointing us back to whatever the truth is, or that deeper understanding about perhaps why we're here and what it's all about. If you could give advice to someone who is seeking perhaps a deeper connection with themselves, maybe a deeper connection with all that is, what would that be?
Well, it would be almost a question. It would be, do you want to know who you are? Do you want to know yourself? Do you really, really want to know who you really are? And um, in some way, we all know that we want that. We all know that when we're asked, "Who are you?" It almost catches us in this questioning. It's like, yeah, and then probably sometimes we come up with things like, "Oh, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a boyfriend, and all this." And at one point, we ran out of all that. We ran out of things that we think we are, and who we are beyond all that we think. What if we could know who we are beyond all that? Who we are beyond whatever we thought we are in the mind? What if we could find that out? Um, and it's just an invitation. It's not um, to tell you who you are, because it can only be found by you.
So, with that in mind, how would you say someone could build a practice that evolves with them over time, touching into broader self awareness? You could call that spirituality. You could call that awakening. You could call that stepping back, as you described earlier, that moment of stopping the mind, or stopping the mind's interpretations of everything and believing that to be true. So again, the question is, how could somebody enter or begin that path?
I think we're already right there. We're already right there in some way of form. This is why we're here. This is why we're all living this experience, and in whatever form is manifesting right now is we can use that as a moment of inquiry, as a point of departure, as a point of looking. Every moment is a moment that we can use as an entry to inquiring into. And for me, it's been inquiry, self-inquiry. It's been very helpful into getting to know who am I, and to getting in touch with what's true and what's real. And it is not how to start, because we've already started, uh, um, but to how to deepen this relationship with this body, with this mind, um, with my experience in this moment, uh, with the relationship with my beliefs, the relationship with my surroundings. We're living in relationship. So it's an invitation to just question, what is the relationship with my thoughts? What is the relationship with my beliefs? What is the relationship with myself? And what is the relationship with another? Because everything that we're experiencing through the other is the way we're experiencing also through our own self. The other one is just being that reflection, that projection, that mirror that is happening constantly. So just looking at that, taking a look at is what I'm whatever I'm looking, how is it manifesting towards instead of that direction, how is it manifesting towards here? And we can use any moment to do that. The way we wash the dishes, and the way we walk, the way we talk, the way um, we're interacting with someone or something, and with our pets. With my pets have been very beautiful mirrors of of all the forms. So
Thank you for that. Yeah, Naran. I just love that. I mean, it points back to really my goal with So Unique. Well, it could for somebody imply that, go out and seek or find a spiritual teacher or a teaching that you resonate with, but it's really about coming back to oneself and starting with that self inquiry. So I love what you shared. Thank you. Thank you. Would you say are there any red flags that people should be aware of when exploring different spiritual paths, communities, teachings, or teachers?
I would not call them red flags. I think they're all good experiences, actually, because wherever we're going towards something, if it doesn't resonate to the truth, it will redirect us to what is really truth. It will realign us on its own. Um, I experienced it with religion, as I shared before, that something in me was not clicking, and I listened to myself, and I was like, that doesn't sound true. And when something sounds true, we go like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's actually good. So it's again getting in touch with the relationship with ourselves, because we know what's true. We know what resonates as true. And if sometimes something comes clouding the truth, then we'll find out that that's not true. And then it will, for me, it has been beautiful to experience that, because then it has shifted me uh, into where should I be looking, really. Okay, this is not, but then it kind of moves towards what feels good, and what sits right, and what feels the right direction almost.
Thank you for that. And I think that's some people could really take that as being just a subtle point, but I think I'd really like to double click on there and just point out how important that is and how huge really just the sense of following one's inner guidance and knowing that we all have our own barometer of what feels good, of what feels right, being able to gauge whether perhaps a spiritual teacher or someone who is presenting themselves as a spiritual teacher is reliable or is trustworthy, all those kinds of things. I think a lot of people, on the quote unquote spiritual path or the spiritual seeking path throw themselves into things even and they don't really know about listening to that inner voice and checking in with that inner gauge about what's true and what's not, or what's beneficial and what's not, what's really for them and their path and what's not. There may be some teachings that people discover that are appear to be like really wonderful for other people, and so sometimes we might say, okay, so I'm going to go do that. But if there's a knowing, if we're constantly checking back in with ourself, and it's just a knowing that despite the fact that there might be many, many people who resonate with some path, doesn't necessarily mean it's the path for you. So I'd love just fine tuning that.
A way I could simplify it is, if it's pointing to the mind, then it's not true.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teaching out there that points to the mind. Let's move on here and talk about your work as a facilitator of the Awareness Intensive. Can Awareness Intensive be done one-on-one, or is it something that's always done in a group setting?
It's a group setting process. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how small or how large could those groups be?
The groups vary from, I've done small groups. I've done the process in a small group, 16 to 20 people, and there are other processes that are a bit bigger than that. I've heard of hundreds of people. So it can be it can be smaller, it can be big, and it doesn't matter, but it has to be done in groups.
So I'll share at the end of this uh, episode more about where to find Naran's work with the Awareness Intensive. And let's just segue here a little bit to your work as a breathwork practitioner. So you're going to be co-leading a breathwork retreat this August at the Pachamama Eco Community in Costa Rica. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll be leading the training with dear friend Dana, and she's my dear teacher as well. The ones that initiated me into breathwork alongside with you. It's just an honor to be able to offer the training, the level 1 and 2, in Pachamama, coming back to a full circle where everything sort of started, and now it's coming into is like another opening for me, and it's a beautiful opportunity to drop into exploring who we are also through the breath.
So amazing what is possible just by changing the pattern of our breathing. I always like to say whenever I lead a breathwork session that for years I always had this sort of inner wish that if we could just have like this a button that we could push on our body or some valve or something that we could pull that would give us access to states of expanded awareness or perhaps open a channel to our higher self or to multidimensional experiences. What a gift that would be. And then I discovered breath work, and it is exactly that. It's like this built-in tool that we have for healing, for broader awareness, for bringing understanding, for so many things that it can be used for. So thank you for sharing that work with the world. And you also do breath work retreats and private sessions in your hometown of Montreal, right?
I do, yes. It's also a very it's a subtle it's a subtle movement from going uh, outwards to going inwards, but it's a very powerful tool that we have, and yeah, it's just a new another way to discover what's been stored in the body, and also what are beliefs, and what are our thoughts around this or that, and also what are beliefs about how the body should or should not react. So um,
What has it been like since you began navigating a career in the arena of personal development, spirituality, transformation, whatever you want to call that?
I was never geared into it. It just happened in front of me all the time naturally. It just felt organic when I started to do the retreats, and slowly um, assisting in the retreats, and then moving into breath work, and then feeling like, oh, this feels really good. And that time at Pachamama, I remember when I was in your first group breath work. I was like, I don't know why I didn't subscribe to this when I saw it online before coming here. uh, and it just felt right. It just felt really right that to take the training. And uh, at the beginning was just curiosity, and then it turned into something that, oh wow, this is helping me a lot. And then it turned into, oh, I would love to offer this as well. And then suddenly I was already offering it, and the same happened with Awareness Intensive. It just slowly was happening, and now it was an opportunity to say yes, instead of usually saying no to what was presented.
So here's a little fun question. Um, are there any books that you would recommend to somebody on the self inquiry path or the spiritual path? Again, whatever you want to call that. Books that have been meaningful for you.
Yeah, I really like The Diamond in Your Pocket from Gangaji.
Okay.
I like The End of Your World from Adyashanti.
Uh huh.
I like The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. I like The Search from Osho, and I like Awake from Angelo Di Lullo.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one as well. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. And just to close here, I'm wondering if you could recommend a simple but powerful practice someone could do today to feel more aligned with themselves or perhaps more aligned with their inner guidance.
If we're able to connect to our five senses, that for me, that's been it is my spiritual practice over and over, to come back to my senses, to come back here each moment, every time, because when we move into the mind, we're moving away from the body. So for me, connecting into my body, to really connecting, okay, what is it that I'm looking at, and what is it that I'm touching, what is it that I'm hearing, what is it that I'm tasting. These are all points of entry to this moment, to being here. What is it? How is my breath like? So every time that we move into the mind and we start hearing a story, then coming again into the body, coming into the senses, coming into what is real, what is here in this moment. So that is it, it my it might not sound spiritual, but tasting this moment, for me, is one of the most rewarding things that I can do for myself.
Thank you for that. That's perfect. Doesn't have to be quote unquote spiritual, but that certainly points us into the realm of something more or something inwards, something deeper. So thank you, brother. It's so great to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Anu, for the invitation. Thank you for hosting today.
So highest vibes and blessings to you as you continue your beautiful and important work and truly being an agent of compassionate healing and transformation for our world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful to Naran for joining me today and for all that he shared. It was really touching, and I was very moved by so many of his stories and his experiences. Quite a journey he's been on. I hope you found it as moving as I have, as well as helpful for you in navigating your own journey. For more information about Naran and his work, you can visit breathing-awareness.com. Again, that's breathing-awareness.com. And in August, this is 2025, in August, Naran is co-leading a Clarity Breathwork retreat, and he is facilitating an awareness intensive, also called Who Am I? And both are taking place at the Pachamama Eco Community in Costa Rica. And you can find more information on both retreats at pachamama.com. That's PACHAMAMA.com. And as always, it's my intention to make the resources and information that were mentioned as easy as possible for you to track down. I will be posting as many as possible of the resources, concepts, and methodologies that were mentioned in our conversation on the soulunique.com website, so you can check them out if you like. And it's my intent, as the Soul Unique podcast continues to grow and expand, to turn the soulunique.com website into a rich library of useful and inspiring information and resources that can help assist you in uncovering, forging, and navigating your own personal spiritual path. If you'd like to join me on this journey, I encourage you to sign up for the Soul Unique mailing list at soulunique.com, and I'll keep you up to date on new episodes, inspiration for your unfolding path, and other resources. And lastly, I'd just like to add a quick plug here that if you appreciated and resonated with this episode, I will be forever grateful and honored if you would please like, follow, and maybe even write a short comment about the episode on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. It will help tremendously in spreading the good vibes about forging a personal spiritual path, as well as about this new and continually evolving podcast. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you very much for listening today. I hope you'll continue to tune in to the Soul Unique podcast in the future. I'm wishing you well, and I'm sending you highest vibes as you continue to navigate your life, and yes, perhaps even your own personal spiritual path. Thank you for being here.